Now I'd like to discuss problem number 2. A brownie recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of flour and 3 eggs. Unfortunately, I only have 1 egg. If I use this 1 egg to make a smaller batch of brownies, how much flour should I use? There are a number of ways to solve this problem, and I'd like to demonstrate a small experiment for solving this problem. However, I need to expect that my students understand at least 2 prerequisite materials, namely how to measure the length of an object and how to represent the number of objects into fraction. So first of all, we need to prepare some materials and tools needed. The first one is some amount of flour. Actually, in the problem, we only need a cup of flour, but here I prefer using a big container of flour, and I will explain later on the reason behind this. We also need some glasses, 1 spoon, a measuring tape or a ruler or anything we can use to measure the length of an object. I'm also showing you 3 eggs, but actually without having these eggs, we still can do these experiments. These eggs will be only used for an illustration. The first thing that we need to do is measuring the height of this flour in this container. Based on the result of my measurement, this is 18 centimeters. Next, we know that the recipe calls 2/3 of a cup of flour. And we want to know how much is 2/3 of a cup of flour. So to know this one, we need to divide the 1 cup of flour into 3 equal portions like this, and we will take 2 of them. So this will represent 2 of 3 of a cup of flour. And we will put this one aside because we will not be using this one to the next step. All we need now is 2/3 of a cup of flour. We know that 2/3 of a cup of flour will be used along with 3 eggs. So the question right now is how much flour do we need if we only have 1 egg? So we need to divide the 2/3 of a cup of flour into 3 equal portions like this. So 1 portion will be equivalent to 1 egg. For the next step, we will only take 1 portion because we have assumed that we only have 1 egg. So the challenge right now is how to represent this amount of flour into fraction comparing to the whole cup of the flour. To do so, we need to return this flour to the container that we have earlier, like this. And then we need to measure the height of the flour. Based on the result of my measurement, this is 4 centimeters, while previously, when it is assumed full, it was 18 centimeters. So if the question is, what is the fraction of the flour that we need to use in terms of the whole cup of the flour, it would be 4/18 of a cup of flour. Actually, 4/18 can be a final answer in case the students haven't learned about how to simplify fractions before. However, if they have learned how to simplify the fractions, it will be better if they represent this one into 2 nines. However, in case the students haven't learned about this before, in the near future, when they are learning about simplifying the fractions, we can recall this experiment and then ask them how to simplify 4/18. So for me, in this stage, it is okay to have 4/18 as the final answer. Actually, this experiment is a little bit fun because the students can do some experiment without involving a lot of mathematical operations. However, this is a little bit tricky for teachers because teachers need to provide a perfect amount of flour. What I mean by perfect amount of flour is that they need to expect the height of flour that the students will measure, and they need to make sure the right amount in order that when it is measured, the students will get the whole numbers instead of decimals, like 2.5 centimeter, even worse, 2.7 centimeters, because if the numbers is ugly, it will be so confusing for students to represent it into fraction. So the teachers need to find the right amount of floors in order that when we measure the height of it, it will result a whole number. The second one is the teachers need to expect that students may do some errors in doing these experiments, like maybe some of floors will be spilled on the floor, or maybe the way the students divide the floor is not really equal or not really even, or the way they measure the height of the floor is not really precise. So having a big container of flour is more advisable. That's because if students do some minor errors, it will not really affect the final result of this experiment. If the students use a small cup of flour instead, some smaller errors will really affect the final answer for this experiment. That is the reason why I prefer using a big container of flour. Well, I think that's all for me about the solution for problem 2. Thank you.